So, good morning once again. I think we have a great number of participants here today. So I'm going to start and then we can see if further attendees trickle in. But yeah, we want to make the most of our hour that we have this morning available for our breakfast briefing and ensure that we get a lot of interaction and questions and answers from our speakers today. So good morning to all of you, formally now. It's fantastic to have you all joining us today on our session on nature-based solutions, biodiversity, and climate. My name is McKenna Davis, and I'm really happy to be your moderator today on behalf of the organizing team of Ecologic Institute and the Institute for European Environmental Policy, IEEP. So before we begin, just a quick note to say that the event is being recorded and live streamed, and we'll make this available after the event for you or your colleagues further viewing options. So about today's topic, just to dive in the context of the acute crisis posed by the corona pandemic, last year's Think 2030 conference focused on the European Green Deal and the related developments in EU policy and their potential contributions to address climate change. The conference created a much needed space for science, policy, and action-oriented discussion of climate-related policy issues. The conference brought together leading experts from across Europe to exchange their ideas on what we can do now and in the coming years to secure our shared future. This breakfast briefing today is one of a couple in a series which has been organized to present the different Think 2030 papers that arose from the conference and to discuss the contents amongst leading experts and practitioners as a basis to think broadly, act quickly, and remain adaptive in developing effective policy responses in this new and changing context. So today we're really happy to launch our Think 2030 paper, which is entitled Using Nature-Based Solutions to Foster Synergies Between Biodiversity and Climate, Missed Chances and Opportunities for a Sustainable Future. Nature-based solutions, as I think many of us are familiar, have been gaining a lot of attention as effective solutions to address important global challenges, not least within the context of the European Green Deal and also the upcoming UN Climate and Biodiversity conferences planned for later this year. As the world continues to battle with the COVID-19 crisis, we've had increased awareness about its link to the exploitation of nature and about the need to improve our relationship with nature as a way to address and to prevent these crises in the future. This shift is urgently needed as a range of recent reports draw attention to the continued and unprecedented decline in biodiversity, both globally and in Europe. As protecting and restoring nature is key to tackling climate change, solutions that harness the power of nature can create opportunities that help to achieve both biodiversity and climate objectives while also delivering important socioeconomic benefits. So for today's session, drawing on these topics, the idea is that we'll start with a short overview of the contents of our Think 2030 paper, noting that several developments have taken place since it was written and published. So just keeping that in mind for some of the recommendations that you might have read. And then subsequently, we'll give the floor to two distinguished speakers who will provide an insight into the implementation of nature-based solutions at the local and national scales and how these can be scaled up to the landscape level. So we're really happy about the mix of panelists that we have here and the speakers, and think it'll be a great discussion and look forward to your contributions as well. And then in the final part of our session, we hope to dig deeper into some of these points raised during the expert presentations and explore specifically your questions and comments in more detail. So we'd invite you all to please write your questions throughout today's event in the question and answer box. And then if you can, to please indicate who the question is directed at so we can point it in the right direction as well. And during the event, we're having great support today to collect your questions and try to really funnel these and answer as many as possible within the available time. So we have the chat box. Please feel free to also write in there. I see in the background a lively discussion happening already, so that's great. But if you'd like your question to be considered, please make sure to write it in the question and answer box so that we can really notice that and not get it lost within the lively chat happening. So yeah, and then just a small hint for us, we'd like to really use today's discussion to dive deeper into the points raised by our speakers, especially building on the two expert presentations. And we'd like to focus on that a little bit more than diving into the paper in detail and rather use the paper as a starting off point. But in case you do have any paper specifics, please feel free to write to myself or Lisa from IEP. We'll speak in a moment after the event, and we'd be really happy to reply and go into more detail with you in a discussion about that. So after the formalities, back to today's event. Without further ado, I would like to first give the floor to Lisa Kopseker from IEP, who is a key author of the report, and she will be briefly introducing its contents and setting the scene for today's discussion. I see Lisa's camera is on her screen. Lisa is a junior policy analyst at IEP who works mainly on biodiversity policies. She brings a background in conservation science and is later again for our panel discussion, but first your presentation.
Thank
Lisa.
you. Thanks, McKenna, and good morning, everyone. So yes, I'll give a very brief overview of our Think 2030 paper, which IEEP and Ecologic Institute wrote towards the end of last year. And as McKenna mentioned, we did compile this paper towards the end of last year, so quite a few policy developments have happened since then, but I'm sure we'll go into them more then when we have our panel discussion later. So the 2020 climate commitments were met, and the Fit for 55 package significantly raised ambition for climate action. And the significant potential of nature-based solutions has been recognized in the space, as they can deliver up to a third of the emissions reductions needed to keep global temperature increases under 2 degrees. But as the climate and biodiversity crises are inextricably linked, there's still a way to go before we can meet our biodiversity objectives. In the EU, the European Green Deal offers the opportunity to integrate biodiversity conservation across sectors. And within this rapidly evolving policy context, we ask the question, how can EU policy action encourage nature-based solutions for climate action and enhance synergies with biodiversity conservation? And one that does come with a global standard developed by the IUCN. And in this paper, we use the definitions from IUCN and the European Commission, both of which highlight that nature-based solutions effectively address societal challenges and deliver biodiversity benefits. So in our paper, we discuss how EU policies have already successfully encouraged the application of nature-based solutions. We identify remaining gaps and opportunities to scale up efforts and meet 2030 objectives. And we also provide priority policy options to address these opportunities. So looking at the EU policy framework, there are various laws that require either the direct application of nature-based solutions to meet ecological objectives, or that actively encourage nature-based solutions, along with other non-binding EU policy strategies. But ultimately, only a third of the policies in the European environmental and climate legislative framework either explicitly or implicitly strongly support nature-based solutions. So there is still significant potential to integrate them in EU policies and wider sectoral legislation. We also looked at the critical role of investments. And overall, member states do report significant EU investments for the application of nature-based solutions. But there is a need to properly integrate these investment needs in national strategies and operational planning. So for example, by explicitly identifying climate and biodiversity investment priorities, for example, in the PAFs and the National Energy and Climate Plans. We then identified some key bottlenecks that are hindering the translation of policy into practice. The first key bottleneck is the significant implementation delays of key EU directives, particularly the Nature Directives, the Water Framework Directive, and the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. And this can be associated in part with the non-binding nature of relevant policies, which has led to shortcomings across sectors in the design and application of policy instruments for the active restoration of ecosystems. There is also a lack of coherence among relevant environmental and sectoral policies at the EU level, and this is mostly in terms of wording, monitoring requirements, and financing instruments. And ultimately, this has led to a fragmented governance arrangements. Another bottleneck is that key EU policy instruments for biodiversity and climate do acknowledge qualities of nature, but ultimately lack quantitative or measurable components. And lastly, the inadequate allocation of funds has hindered more widespread implementation and uptake of nature-based solutions in the EU. And so from this, we developed some key policy recommendations based on our findings. The first was to accelerate the implementation of key EU legal commitments delivering on nature-based solutions. For member states, this would mean higher and more targeted investment that meets public investment needs. And the Commission could invest in sufficient operational capacity and, when necessary, promote implementation and enforcement. Our second recommendation was to adopt ambitious EU legislation for mandatory ecosystem restoration that builds on and complements existing commitments with legally binding smart targets and deadlines. And for example, this could be for achieving the favorable conservation status of habitats and species covered under the nature directives. Our third key recommendation was to boost the investment for nature-based solutions by improving biodiversity, proofing, and tracking of all relevant EU and national investment. And this would help to more precisely and regularly assess the progress of integrated funding against the needs and objectives, and to take additional action when necessary to meet 2030 objectives. And so that was a super quick, brief overview of our paper. You can read the whole paper. This is also on our website on IEP and also on the event page. So just in case you want to dive in. And yeah, back to you, McKenna. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Lisa. Just a quick comment. I see in the chat that there's some questions coming in that are content related. Just a friendly reminder, if you have content questions that you'd like later for Lisa or two panelists to answer, please be sure to ask those directly into the Q&A box, and then we'll be sure to recognize those and not miss them in the chat. So yeah, please feel invited to enter your questions there. So after that great overview, we now have two further distinguished speakers who will provide their reactions to our paper, bringing in their perspectives and real world experiences to bring this down to earth a little bit. And I'd like to just highlight there's been a slight restructuring of the agenda. So we have two instead of three speakers today. Therefore, we have Lisa joining us on the panel, which is great. So thank you for your understanding. It's a little bit challenging sometimes given these current world situations. So thanks a lot for that. So our first panelist today, we have Tim van Hattem. Tim has over 20 years as a consultant, policymaker, and researcher in the field of water management and climate adaptation. Currently, he's program leader of the Green Climate Solution at Wageningen University and Research. And together with a group of researchers, he developed a nature-based vision for the Netherlands. So the floor is yours, Tim. Please feel free to share your screen. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I will try to share my screen. I hope you see the slides now. Yes?
Yep, we see the slides.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yes, I'm Tim van Hattem. I'm indeed program leader of the Green Climate Solutions program at Wageningen University and Research. And at the end of 2019, we published a nature-based vision for the Netherlands. Actually, a vision how the Netherlands could look like when we apply nature-based solutions on a massive scale. To put some more pressure on thinking about nature-based solutions. So in the next couple of minutes, I will take you to the future of the Netherlands. But I would like to start with today. This picture pretty much represents the world today. You could say the world is on fire, and well, we keep on playing a game of golf. And we are facing a lot of challenges, climate change, now we have COVID on top of that. And we are very busy with these short-term issues. But of course, we need a long-term perspective to deal with all the challenges we are facing. And if you ask people in the Netherlands, how do you think the Netherlands will look like? People think that our country will be flooded in 100 years. Of course, they hear a lot of messages about climate change, about sea level rise. We know large part of our country is below sea level. So people are getting concerned about the future. And of course, we want them to act and not, we also want to create awareness. And as scientists, we are already talking about the impact of climate change for many years. But we also want to explain and to show them the way we want to go. But on top of climate change, of course, we have also a biodiversity issue. And we all know that. And you could say climate change and biodiversity are the big challenges of the 21st century, and we really need an integrated long-term approach to deal with these issues. So we thought, okay, can we create a new narrative for the Netherlands, a nature-based narrative? Because yeah, if you see our country from above, we are a low-lying delta, a small country, very densely populated. There's a lot of things going on. We have a lot of agriculture, a lot of people, a lot of infrastructure, and we are facing a lot of challenges. We have the energy transition. We want to move towards a circular economy. And we have a lot of agriculture. We want to move towards a more circular and regenerative agriculture. And we still have to build 1 million homes, 1 million new houses in the Netherlands in the next 10 years. So we are facing a lot of challenges, and we are lacking space. So we need an integrated long-term approach for the Netherlands. But on top of that, we are facing climate change and biodiversity issues. So that's where nature-based solutions come in. And we all know that nature-based solutions are win-win-win solutions that can help us mitigate climate issues, store carbon, help us to adapt to the impact of climate change, and also restore biodiversity. So we thought, how could the Netherlands look like if we apply these nature-based solutions on a large scale? If we create a story of how the Netherlands would look like, can we explain to people and mobilize the energy towards nature-based thinking? And the first thing we did was to create some new guiding principles for redesigning the Netherlands. And we said, okay, if we want to rethink the Netherlands in the next 100 years, we should start with the natural system. Our landscape, our soils, our water system should be the starting point of redesigning the Netherlands and make the Netherlands future-proof. We also said, okay, water is essential. We experienced in the last 3 years that we have a lot of drought problems. In the beginning, the Netherlands is mainly we were focusing on the flooding problem, but we also experienced drought problems. So water is essential, and we have to retain water and reuse it and store it before we start draining into the sea. Well, we want to move towards a climate to a circular and climate positive economy. We have to adapt to the impact of climate change, and we want to move towards nature inclusive society. And based on these guiding principles, we started drawing the future of the Netherlands and drawing a nature-based future of the Netherlands. And we thought, okay, we can write a very thick report, but we thought, okay, maybe it's better to create a map, because if you want to know where you want to go, well, you need a map. If you travel, you need a map. So we were traveling towards the 21st century, and we created a nature-based map for the future of the Netherlands. And well, we think that the Netherlands in 100 years will look like this if we apply these nature-based solutions on a large scale. And well, if you zoom in, and you see a lot of differences from today. So we will have much more energy, produce much more energy at sea. But we also start producing much more food at sea, oysters, mussels, but also a lot of seaweed to make sure that a part of our protein transition will take place at sea. We also create much more space for our rivers to accommodate all this extra water that will come because of climate change, but also to create extra nature. We will restore our wetlands. We have a lot of peatlands in our country where soil subsidence is a big problem, and they are emitting a lot of carbon dioxide. So if we re-wet these peatlands, we will store all this carbon and create a lot of solutions. And we in our sandy soils we have a lot of drought problems, and there we start to retain all the water create nature inclusive agriculture, and also produce a lot of trees. We will double the amount of trees in our country. And well, these are examples of nature-based solutions, and we just put them on the map to show how a nature-based future could look like in the future if we take the right decisions. And what we experienced when we published this story, that there is a huge need for a future narrative, a nature-based narrative for the future of our country, because people are hearing a lot of bad news every day about climate change, loss of biodiversity, COVID. It's a lot of bad news. But if we start talking about the future we want and visualizing the future we want, we experience that there is a need, and a huge need in society for these kinds of stories. So our story was published in all newspapers in the Netherlands. It was on TV, it was in magazines. There was a lot of discussion on social media about this. And people really liked this way of thinking about the future, and it mobilized a lot of energy with policymakers, with businesses, but also in society, to start thinking in this direction. So I think this is really a very good way of thinking about the future and creating awareness of nature-based solutions. And this is my last slide. I think the main question is, how do we get there? Because we created a really long-term vision, 100 years ahead. Of course, it's very long, and we know that politics is thinking in much more in the short-term periods. So we need also to create or to backcast to today, because all these decisions we make today make that we move into this direction, or we are moving a totally different direction. And well, we always say that our country, and I think any country in the world, could be a living lab for nature-based solutions. We already have in the Netherlands a lot of great examples of nature-based solutions, and any country in the world has great examples of nature-based solutions. And we should share all these experience with each other and showcase that nature-based solutions is a very, very good way forward. And yeah, of course, the future starts today. So every decision we take today should move into the right direction. And well, I'm really looking forward to well, to make this happen, and also to start thinking about creating a nature-based vision for any country in the world, because I think we did this exercise for the Netherlands, but I think any country could do an exercise like this. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Tim. Very inspiring presentation. And I think we'll definitely dive more into the question you pose yourself about how do we actually get there. We can discuss that a little bit more later with your backcasting recommendation, but I think that's a really great point to jump onto. So for now, we have our second presentation. Please feel free again to keep putting your questions into the question and answer box, especially indicating who those questions are aimed for, and we'll be happy to come back to those in a minute. But first, our next panelist presentation is from Sebastian Schlecht. He's an architect specializing in urban development who's been working for the city of Essen since 2010. He's a project manager in the real estate division until 2015, and then took over project management for the European Green Capital Essen 2017. Congratulations to Essen for that. And right now in his work, he focuses on the strategic coordination of the continuation of the goals of the European Green Capital in the intersection between environment, mobility, climate protection and adaptation, and gray, green, and blue infrastructure. So please take the virtual stage, Sebastian.
Thank you, McKenna, for that beautiful introduction, and also for inviting me to that nice breakfast format. I really appreciate that early morning meeting. So that's completely different than meeting mostly late in the evening. And thanks for this whole framework here. Thanks, Tim, for your presentation. I really loved to see your report when it was published. And I will have a more local view, but also I will start with the regional perspective on landscape and nature. And I have to say that I'm an architect, so I will have some more focus on city level and the local neighborhoods and how they will perform in the future, or they have to. Okay, my screen is shared. McKenna, are you seeing my screen? Great, okay. So McKenna already introduced me. I'm working in the city of Essen. We have been the European Green Capital 2017. And we are a city in the heart of a region, which is a landscape. You see this map, it's from 200 years ago. This area today is populated or urbanized by 5.1 million people. But you see very good on this 100 years ago view that this ecosystem, which is today the basis of this urbanized area, how it worked with the rivers and the landscape and the villages. Today it looks like this, and the whole area is populated to one of the biggest metropolitan areas of Europe. And it was also one of the most productive coal mining areas of the world. And so this whole landscape was disturbed by the coal mining. The whole surface level is was sinking through the coal mining. And today we have these beautiful landscapes we are promoting and we are talking about our historical industrial sites, which have become UNESCO World Cultural Heritage for architecture, which have become hotspots for biodiversity with more than 800 species, counting on sulfur and coal mine ground. But still remembering that this coal mining is one of the causes of the damage on our whole area landscape, and also maybe coal mining has an important impact on climate change also. So on the landscape level, we started to repair these issues with Emscher Genossenschaft project, may be well known. It's the Emscher reconstruction. So the whole Emscher River stopped working through the sunken earth levels. So this Emscher reconstruction was a 30 years project. It will be finished next year to rebuild a whole river system in the whole area with an area of 800 square kilometer, covering also the city areas connected by the small creeks connecting many cities of the Ruhr region. You see Essen here in the middle of this water system. So water is quite important in the Ruhr area, and this whole ecosystem of the river today is not becoming a real natural river again. It still is depending on technical issues, because the earth level does not allow the water to flow on the whole area on the natural way. So there is a high win situation for neighborhoods and quality of life and biodiversity by this project. It also generates lots of jobs and knowledge. So we are working on this project in the whole region since 3 decades. And what I really like on the Wageningen paper is the view ahead for a longer time frame. So the plus 100 years is quite important to have a look. If you see what is happening today, and we need solutions for the next generations, we have to be aware of a much longer perspective to handle. So Essen was the European Green Capital 2017, and one of the main main goals of Essen, and also pointed out by the jury, was the green infrastructure that our region has put in place in the transforming these industrial sites and these industrial infrastructures. And this was really a great step to work on that abundant and wastelands. Industry already left some years ago, some decades ago. Still today, we have many of these places still in transformation, so that this process is still continuing. And to bring back nature on that industrial sites is having so many side effects on jobs, on quality of life, on health and biodiversity, on climate issues and all that. That is really a plus for the region and for all people living there. But still there is a long way to go and a hard job to do. And we experience that this climate change is still giving us a plus of work to do on top of everything we did. So we have the Green Capital is based on a 12 indicator system, which we are using as an integrated management tool. And the European Green Capital also put this in a Green City tool, which is helping cities to get into this integrated management system, only shortly mentioned here. So what I said before, this climate change, Paris Agreement, this is a job we have to do. We have also impacts from the pandemic, everybody knows. We have risks. We all know that things are happening, but where do they happen and how does it affect cities? The effects are very local, and so the action also has to come to the ground. And we have the ecosystem restoration decade by the UN. It's starting this year, and it is also focusing on urban areas. So that is really an important point of view, that urban areas are parts of ecosystem and they have to behave like ecosystems, and we have to design them like ecosystems. So these are only some pictures from Essen from the last years. We had a huge storm 2014. We had a drought, so many people suffering and died. And we experienced that even if we water these trees, many of them don't make it over the years. So this year we experienced some more trees stopped working at all. We tried to water them the last 2 years, and last year we already started watering trees in April. We have heavy rain, but it's on the wrong time, on the wrong place, and it's too much, so the rain is just going away. The water is flowing into the sewer system. And this is an example from the low impact development. It's already 10 years old, but it gives us an idea on the way to go from hard to soft engineering, to use more natural systems to care for this water and to bring that into account for urban nature. But if we do something, if we do reconstruct our urban systems, we will also emit CO2 by doing the job. So we have to be aware that the building sector is one of the main sources of carbon emissions. So we have to use tools. This is a very beautiful example from Pamela Conrad. She has designed the climate positive design tool, which really explains very well how we can think of designing our cities and our places to be sure that they will become positive, climate positive, also in the perspective we need them to become positive. And we have a really great potential in the cities. This is a picture from Rudi Scheuermann from Arup. He's just promoting the idea that we have to use the surfaces of the city. And if you put a building in the city, it has 6 sides, and only one side is the ground, and we have 5 sides of the building which are potential. We can use to bring our cities, green our cities, and use the performance of nature to cool them, to bring clean air and quality of life to our neighborhoods. And we need this performance. This is an example from Wienpass. It's a company from Vienna. They also work in our region. And how can nature perform, and what can it bring for benefits, and in a productive way in producing oxygen, quality of life, lowering temperatures, and also bringing a quality in the space where people live, where people rent their homes. How many trees are there is very important. We have today so many tools, digital tools, to work on how we can, how our nature is performing, but we have to implement them much better. I think this is really a great potential for us to work on: tree coverage, and how do they affect our city area. This is an example I just found yesterday or 2 days ago. It says in the British Ecological Society's report that in the city of Leicester, it is only covering 0.03% of Britain's land, but it's accounting on 0.2% of the above ground carbon store. So we see that even urban areas have a huge potential in to provide carbon storage through urban trees and urban nature. So nature is in the city also to be maintained. And what is really important is that in the cities, there are also our infrastructures, and most of the people live in cities. And if we get the idea of the soft engineering and the nature-based solutions, and this is one step more, is the idea of soft city by David Sim from Gale Architects. Soft is hard to break. For me, this is a really interesting phrase. And if we design our neighborhoods, our very local neighborhoods, in a way that we can provide a good quality of life, and also allow people to behave in a different way, this can be a really big step towards zero emission society. And so the hyperlocal neighborhood, this is the example from Sweden, the 1 minute city, but it's very important to bring this nature-based solutions in front of our doors, and in the range of people where they step out of their door. We really also experience that in times of this pandemic, that the local neighborhood is becoming more and more important. So this is an example.
Sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we leave a little bit of room for the discussion. I'm just wondering.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's great.
I got lost.
It's all very inspiring. I wasn't sure how many slides you have left. Otherwise, maybe we can pick
not
up
too many.
The points in the discussion.
Yeah, I will be finished soon.
Perfect.
You made me relax in saying I have more than 5 minutes. Okay. Yeah, I think the local neighborhood and biodiversity they have to be integrated. So people and nature have to be in a systemic understanding. We do not need to separate nature everywhere to bring the habitats in the one place and people and urban areas on the other side. We have to integrate the views, and this can also bring very beautiful designs. This is a design from Sheffield. They integrate water management, biodiversity, and cycling, walking in a very great project here. And we have a view in Essen. This is the a situation of the university quarter in Essen, which brought a waterway on a place, which you see on the historical map here. Is quite interesting that this is an abundant railway site from industrial railway transportation system. But in the historical map, you see that there was water all around the city before. So, and today we have the main roads where we historically, or on the landscape level, there should be water, and we put roads there. So we have to think about that. If we have climate change, why do our systems not work anymore? I just show you this picture to present that our regional approach are also very interesting. We have a great program in the whole region, which is called Offensive Green Infrastructure, and we're heading to the International Horticultural Exhibition 2027, which will also have a huge impact on how people behave with green infrastructure and how they, what is the potential of the horticultural exhibition will be find a new level on this regional exhibition. And this is my last slide.
Thanks a lot.
Sorry, no, this is my last slide. I want to point out that we also have a great biodiversity project in the region, and they it's called Urbane Biodiversität.de, and they work on a regional biodiversity strategy to integrate it in the climate adaptation and the other programs on a regional level. So thanks for giving me the time, McKenna. I'm done.
No, it's always the challenge with these short sessions is that we have so much interesting information. I would love to extend it actually to be 4 or 5 hours and go more into depth. I'm just trying to be conscious, sorry for before, but just to be conscious that we have a lot of interesting questions coming in from our audience as well to build on the points that you and Tim and Lisa have raised so far. So I'd like to dive right into that. I think now to make sure that we really optimize the time. I saw a lot of questions in the chat after Tim's presentation. So I think I'd like to start with that. There were a lot of questions about success factors. So about how to increase awareness and buy-in for the use of NBS, and also in terms of the exercise in the Netherlands. So when you were conducting this vision building, how did you actually mobilize society around it? How can this be replicated in other contexts? So maybe we start with that to inspire all of our attendees.
Yeah, I think it's good to explain that we created this vision in the first place only with the research community. So at the campus in Wageningen, we have experts from all kinds of fields. So we organized a group of experts, hydrologists, landscape architects, biologists, marine biologists, ecologists, climate experts, soil experts. I think over 18 people from different expertise, and we put them in a room, and we started this discussion of how could the Netherlands look like if you take this nature-based perspective on these based on these design principles we defined, and then we started drawing this this map and this story, and then we published the story. So in the first place we didn't involve society, but we thought, okay, we just create this vision because we thought it was very important to create much more awareness of the importance and all the benefits that nature-based solutions have. Well, that worked out pretty well because our map went viral and everybody was talking about it. And then we started, I think last year I spent, I don't know, I think maybe I did 200 presentations on the, but online, most of them online, about this topic with many, for many different audiences. So for ministries, for businesses, but also for groups of students. And we had lots of discussions with society about how to, if this is the future we want and how to realize this. And so we are a little bit in that process at this moment to discuss it with all kinds of people, which is very interesting. And I think it is good to create, to first create something like this with experts, and then going to society. Because if you start doing it already with all kinds of stakeholders, everybody's looking at his own point of view, and that's what we really didn't do, because we really took a long-term perspective to stay away from these everybody's here and now visions. And so that's what we did.
Thanks a lot. There's quite a few follow-up questions in the chat and the question and answer right now about more specifics about which kinds of models you used and the kind of figures that you were using, also considering industry. So I would say, if it's okay for you, we maybe also shoot you some of these questions afterwards, and then we can have a brief summary of the responses also included with our reporting of the event, just so we don't miss those.
No problem. Yeah,
that would be great. Thanks a lot. And then also for you, Sebastian, there are questions coming in now as well. So I'd like to just ask you, it's a little bit taking a step back about the current COVID situation. And saying, which opportunities and risks do you see in linking nature-based solutions to today's hot topics that are attracting a lot of public and policy attention? So talking about Corona, but also climate change. And in that context, what needs to be done to increase the awareness and buy-in for the use of NBS in general within the recovery packages or within the climate discussions, if you have a view on that?
Yeah, thank you for that, McKenna. So I think that we see nature-based solutions have a huge potential in bringing that quality of life to local neighborhoods, and also to support the health and the other sectors, like they influence how you move, how which transport system you use. This is very much important on things how we implement infrastructure in cities, and but it's quite hard to discuss, and it's also very difficult to integrate this in the financing of that, because on the local level we have to bring that on the ground. We have to invest money to build up something, and different financial flows. So there is the health, a very important sector in financing. Financial sector is the health system. It is separated from the money we use in the local government, and also what we also see is real estate and risk and insurance sector. And so our communities or our local governments, they have to work this out on the financing side, and also we have to bring lots of to work much more on the educational level to bring the knowledge of this intersectoral thinking and behaving to different departments, and also to the minds of different professions, because we only can use this, we only can build up this intersectoral performance of nature-based solutions that everybody is working is understanding in. And if people already are used to implement closed sewer systems in cities since 30 years, it's a really step to discuss nature-based solutions with them. Or if people are used to build roads and transport systems since decades, and you tell them you are part of a nature-based solution, they do not really get into it at once, because they are thinking in their systems and they did their job very well since a long time. So we have to bring these people together, and also to empower this integrated possibilities of these nature-based solutions, and also to have a new perspective. I think what Tim did is really great thing, that we need this vision, and we need to also visualize a transformation with pictures. So I really enjoy what is going on the internet, this green the streets visualizations, because this can really show how places can change. And this is a very simple way to discuss bringing that on the map or on the visualization. So to involve people is quite important.
Thanks a lot. Definitely a lot of food for thought of how to actually do this in practice. I think that's really helpful to have the concrete recommendations that you just provided. I have, building on your answer, a question from the audience I think could be relevant for all three of you from your perspectives, could be interesting. If you have a brief answer to it, it would be great, I think, just to have a little bit of exchange. And the question was that NBS tend to be more extensive in scale than hard engineered options. So implies that they're dispersed amongst different stakeholders. One thing that we talk a lot about is upscaling. So the attendee asks, what is the balance in your opinion between legislation to implement nature-based solutions versus incentives to encourage a transition? And how do we kickstart the change beyond only flagship projects? So I think this is something we talk about a lot, upscaling and those challenges. So if each of you could just say one quick idea of that. I know it's difficult to summarize, but maybe just your impressions. So yeah, incentives versus legislation and upscaling would be the key points there. So maybe Lisa, we can start with you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, from the policy perspective, there's been a lot of developments that have definitely increased ambition, both from the climate and biodiversity spheres. And I think just recently, the European Commission also published a handbook on nature-based solutions to try and make it a more tangible kind of topic as well, and to measure success also for funders. And I think that's key, to make it a tangible, kind of graspable topic that can then be scaled down from the policy level. And then also this key point of investment. So trying to use public funding to actually leverage better and more targeted private investment. I think those are really the key kind of points that would really help this scaling up and also scaling down from the policy level.
Thanks a lot. Tim, we'll go with you next.
Yeah, I think we already have great examples of nature-based solutions. I think one example, for instance, in the Netherlands is the Room for the River program, where we created much more space for the rivers together with nature conservation or extra nature, which is a great example. But what you see is that the upscaling of these examples is going very slowly, also in the Netherlands. And so I think, well, policy is of course very important, but also this long-term view on nature-based solutions. And I think it's very important also that we start having a much better narrative about the benefits of nature-based solutions, because we tried with these ecosystem services to calculate or to put that on money, to monetize the benefits of nature-based solutions. But yeah, we have to start creating a much better story about what does it bring us, and I think that's really needed also to involve investors to start putting a lot of money in nature-based solutions.
Thanks a lot. And Sebastian, from your perspective.
Yeah, I think the main topics have been mentioned already. So I think it's the performance of nature is also bringing the win-win situation also for investors. We experience on some projects that if we implement a green infrastructure in a place which was not, people have not been able to to have a vision that this could be a great place to live. So we transform this abundant industrial sites, and so the landscape is enabling a vision for people to see, this is a great place for housing, this can be a great neighborhood in 10 or 20 years. So that's for our story of transforming from industrial to future. The green is really a big leverage, also in the minds. And we also have now an interesting discussion, which is also based on a greening vision of an inner city. It's coming from a university master work, and so the picture of greening the inner city of Essen was bringing such a vivid discussion on all levels and all sectors of our departments, that all this thing we could start to discuss things we have not been able before, because of bringing that on a vision, visible on the picture. And people just said, wow, yeah, that can be a future. That's really a great place. And today there is a road with 8 lanes, and it's just so sad to cross it. And you stop on so many red lights to cross this canyon of cars and dust. And this can be a really great green place. So it's to transport this, and also to say this is a long way to go. It's worth. So what I said is the +100 perspective is very important, and not only what we can have a decision now and it will be finished next year, and then we have a result. That's also step by step is also important, but where are we going? It's maybe the main driver of this transformation, and also of scale up for the implementation.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, if I could give you 3 the power to enact your ideas tomorrow, I definitely would. Yeah, our hour is unfortunately almost over. So I would like to just draw this to a close, even though, as I said, I would really enjoy continuing the conversation with you all. And thanks to everyone for your contributions. I hope that we have a lot of food for thought and inspiration for all of our attendees moving forward today. We've heard about local and national initiatives taking place, concrete actions and ideas for upscaling and mainstreaming, and also about windows of opportunity that we have that we can really apply across our different areas of work to increase buy-in, investment, and policy impact, and importantly, to increase the uptake of nature-based solutions. So on that note, I'd like to thank all of our experts for their excellent contributions, as well as everyone from IEP and Ecologic working behind the scenes to make today's event a success. And then, of course, you all as participants for giving us your time this morning and for your lively engagement and interactions. So wishing you all a great rest of your day. And as we said, we're recording this event, so we'll post it afterwards. And if you have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to get in contact with any of us. Thanks a lot, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks to you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.